Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson and welcome to the Thinking in English podcast, a podcast for intermediate to advanced level English learners. Who am I? What has happened to thinking in English over the past 4 years? How can you get more involved with the show? For the first time since November 2020, I am doing a public update to my introduction episode. I hope you enjoy listening and enjoy finding out more about me and about thinking in English. In November 2020, to celebrate the 25th episode of Thinking in English, I released an episode titled Who Am I? This episode introduced some facts about my life, talked about why I started thinking in English, and gave some thoughts about the future of the podcast. To be completely honest, I had entirely forgotten about this episode. It was uploaded over 4 years ago, right at the beginning of Thinking in English, when I had very few listeners. However, a few weeks ago, I started getting some comments on the episode on Spotify. To my surprise, people were still listening to this introduction episode and learning information about me and the show. The problem with this is that so much has changed since 2020. So much has changed with thinking in English, and so much has changed with my personal life. Today, I want to give you all an update. I'll talk about my background, what has changed over the past 4 years of thinking in English, and share some facts about the show. And I'll end by talking a little bit about my Patreon subscription service as well. But first, this episode is sponsored by Lingoda. And if you've been thinking about finally taking your language learning seriously, this is your moment. It's Lingoda's spring sale, and nothing says new season, new you like finally speaking fluently in real conversations. Many Thinking in English listeners, and actually my brother, have been learning with Lingoda for a while now, and what they all love is how flexible it is. With Lingoda Flex, you can take lessons anytime from anywhere in the world. Whether you feel like doing 5 lessons a month or 40 lessons a month, you can completely tailor your plan. All classes are taught by native level English teachers. The groups are super small, a max of 5 people, and the feedback is always personal and practical. It's a path to fluency that actually fits your lifestyle. And with Lingoda's 7-day free trial, you can test things out first. Try free group classes or even a one-on-one class. And here's the best part. Right now, you can get up to 35% off Lingoda Flex by using my code, THINKING35 at checkout. But be quick, the spring sale ends on June 2nd. Just head to try.lingoda.com/thinking35 and start your journey to confident speaking today. So let's start at the beginning. My name is Tom Wilkinson. I'm nearly 30 and I grew up in a small village in the English countryside. I left my hometown in 2013 to study history and politics at university. In my final year of university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Probably like many of you back when you were students. I was applying for jobs in banking and finance. I had no idea why I was applying for these jobs because they didn't really sound interesting to me. Really, I wanted to keep studying. I wanted to do a master's degree and eventually a PhD and go on to academia researching political science. But I couldn't afford to do this. I couldn't afford to carry on studying at university. In the end, I decided that I would work for a year or 2 while trying to save up enough money to study for a master's degree. At the same time as I was applying for banking jobs, a friend of mine told me about something called the JET program. The JET program is a Japanese government program designed to recruit young university graduates from English-speaking countries to work in Japanese schools as assistant language teachers. Basically, they take hundreds of British, Canadian, American, Australian, New Zealand young people and send them to Japan every year. I had no knowledge of Japan. I'd never eaten Japanese food. I'd never watched Japanese TV. I knew very little about the country. But it sounded like an interesting opportunity to me. I'd spent a lot of my time at university working in education, including for the university's education outreach programs and also as a tutor for a local charity. And I'd spent a lot of time at university doing international things. I'd been to Malaysia and India through study scholarships. So I decided to apply. I applied for a teaching role in Japan. And after a lot of forms, a very nerve-wracking interview at the Japanese embassy in London, and a lot of waiting, I was accepted. 2 weeks after graduating, I joined hundreds of other British people, plus even more from around the world, in flying to Japan. I was sent to the city of Niihama on the island of Shikoku. Niihama is a medium-sized city, but in one of the more rural parts of Japan. I was absolutely terrified the day I arrived, but I ended up having 2 of the best years of my life there. I met great people, learned to live by myself in a foreign country, became conversational in Japanese, and really wanted to learn more about Japan. I also became a much better educator and teacher. I was studying Japanese myself, so I started to understand what it was like to be someone learning a language. And I also saw a lot of good things and a lot of less good things in the Japanese education system. I saw some of the great teachers they had, but also some of the flaws in the way that people were taught, using textbooks that were out of date or not interesting or not relevant to people's lives. I left Japan in 2018 to do a master's degree in Asian politics in London, which was a great experience and I've talked about in previous episodes. When I graduated from my master's degree, I moved to Taiwan for a few months to study Chinese, and then COVID happened. When I recorded the first version of this episode in 2020, this was basically the story of my life. I had come back from Taiwan a few months earlier and entered a UK that was fully locked down due to COVID. I started teaching online and working in a supermarket at night. I would listen to a lot of podcasts while working the night shift, including Japanese learning podcasts. I thought that maybe I could also make a podcast, and one of the ideas I came up with was thinking in English. I've released a few Patreon bonus episodes that cover this topic in much more detail. Become a patron if you're interested in learning more. I worked like crazy 4.5 years ago. For the first 2.5 years, maybe 3 years of thinking in English, I released 3 episodes a week. I would record episodes at midnight in my mum's house after finishing the evening supermarket shift. I'm not really sure why I was working so hard back then to make Thinking in English episodes. I was working 2 jobs plus recording 3 episodes a week, but I had no listeners. In fact, I now get more downloads on my average Monday than I did in the first 9 months of Thinking in English. That's 9 months of 3 episodes a week get less downloads than Monday. But I kept releasing episodes, I kept learning, and I kept slowly improving, and now this is my full-time job. As I've said a few times, the last time I recorded this kind of public introduction episode was over 4 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. You might know some of these things if you're a Patreon member, or you've been following me for a long time, or you follow me on Instagram. So here is a very quick summary of the past 4.5 years of my life. I moved to Tokyo as a research student for 1.5 years. The week I moved to Japan, I nearly quit thinking in English. I was in a hotel in COVID quarantine for 2 weeks without my microphone. I couldn't record episodes, and I nearly decided to stop. No one was listening to me. However, the downloads started increasing at that time, basically. So I decided to stick with it a little bit longer. I set up a Patreon subscription in July 2022. I did not really expect anyone to join, but some of you amazing people did. For the first time, I was making a little bit of money each month. I had hoped to have 5, maybe 10 people join, but I think I had 30 or 40 of you guys join in the first month of me starting a Patreon subscription. And 5 or 6 of you joined at the highest level of subscription, paying, I think it was $40 a month, which was amazing. I started working with a few freelance English teachers who helped to run the conversation clubs and teach English to you guys, because I don't really teach. I left Japan in November 2022 after my scholarship ended, and I decided not to extend it. I also couldn't find a job in Japan. In December 2022, over 100 people signed up to my Patreon in 1 month. It completely changed my plans and my life. I went from looking for a job in the UK, in London, probably in finance or research or something like that. Instead, I started planning how to make thinking in English an actual business, how to make this my job. I got married in 2023 to my wonderful wife and moved back to Japan, where I now live. Thinking in English got its first sponsors. The first person actually to pay for my promotion was Alistair Budge from English Learning for Curious Minds. I'm sure many of you know his podcast. He was the first sponsor of the show. I made big changes to the way I produce Thinking in English episodes, and I tried to become a little bit more professional. I bought more equipment, I paid more attention to YouTube and social media, and I took planning a little bit more seriously. I launched a new podcast series called Thinking in English Grammar, which I'm really proud of and happy about. And I joined a podcast network called Airwave Media, which hosts lots of great podcasts and helps find me sponsors and advertisers. In fact, if you want to sponsor or advertise on Thinking in English, there's an email address in the description of this episode, and you can reach out to Airwave Media. And I think this takes us up to about this point in time. I'm sure I've missed some major developments or events over the past 4 years, but I guess you get the picture. I think there is something interesting about Thinking in English. On the one hand, we are now one of the larger podcasts in the English learning niche. On the other hand, I don't really do anything like a professional podcaster, and I don't really do anything that makes sense to why we're so successful. Over 550,000 of you follow me on Spotify. The show has now had over 15 million total downloads. On Spotify last year, I was the #1 podcast for over 70,000 people. And I was in the top 5 podcasts for 272,000 people and the top 10 podcasts for 386,000 people. That is so many people. The show has basically been listened to in almost every country in the world. Usually I'm in the Polish, Italian, Spanish, Brazilian, Colombian, and Mexican podcast charts almost every week. I've been in the podcast charts somewhere in the world for every week for the past 2 or 3 years. 71% of you started listening to me in the last year. 28% of Thinking in English listeners are between the age of 35 and 44. 22% are between the ages of 25 and 29, and 19% are between 30 and 34, with all the other ages adding up to the rest of the number. They are just some of the really interesting facts about the show. We've been listened to almost everywhere. There are hundreds of thousands of you who listen. My episodes usually get tens, occasionally into the hundreds of thousands of downloads per episode, which makes us one of the larger podcasts in this English learning space. I'm really proud at the numbers, and I'm really amazed at how successful we've become. However, I don't do anything professionally. I do this all by myself. I'm very much an amateur. And every time I talk with other people who create podcasts for English learners, they're quite surprised by some of the things I do. For example, I didn't use a podcast editing tool until last year. I would edit it on Spotify itself. I use Spotify to upload my podcast, or I used to, and it's only last year that I started using real editing software. I don't have a mailing list or a newsletter to try and get new listeners or new customers for my business. I don't pay for advertising. Right? I don't sponsor other podcasts. I don't put ads on Instagram or other sites or TikTok. I very rarely appear on other shows, and I don't really invite guests onto Thinking in English either. I also don't really know much about podcasting. Someone emailed me the other day and I had to ask them to define the words they were using, because I don't use podcasting terms and I don't know much about how to make a successful podcast. I also don't charge for my podcast transcripts. This is the main way that many other shows make money. They charge you to access transcripts. From the beginning of Thinking in English, my transcripts have always been free. At first, they were free on my website. They weren't very good, but they were there. They were free. And now they are free still on my website, but also on Spotify. On YouTube, I've got captions enabled, and the most recent few months of episodes have full transcripts on the screen. And also on Apple, I think, they have transcripts as well. The only way that Thinking in English has become my job is due to all of you listening and supporting me. And I just want to end this episode by talking about my Patreon subscription and asking you all to join and support me over there as well. I understand if you don't want to hear this kind of advertisement spiel I'm going to give, so you can stop listening here. I'm fine with that. But if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about Patreon and why I think you should join, and why I think you should join now rather than later, please keep listening. Thinking in English is successful primarily because of my Patreon supporters. There is no way that I would have been able to become a full-time podcaster without all of you who have joined and supported me at some point over the past 2-3 years. We currently have over 400 active Patreon members. I think it's higher than 400. I can't remember the exact number. And over the past 2 years, over 1,000 of you have joined at some point for at least 1 month. I try to make my Patreon the best possible value. Let me tell you everything that I released and every event I held in March this year. I know this episode is probably coming out at the end of April, beginning of May, but I don't have those events yet, so I'm going to tell you what happened in March. In March, I released 4 exclusive bonus episodes for my Patreon subscribers. We did the history of the internet, why is housing so expensive, how I'm becoming more productive or trying to be, and the US officially chooses English. What does it mean? I also held 24 conversation clubs in March. That is 6 each week. And we talked about the topics comparisons of equality, superlatives, homes, rent and housing, and how to be productive. I also made 5 podcast episodes available without ads or commercials. So like this episode with no advertisements on it, I put that on Patreon as well. And you can listen to those on Spotify or anywhere you like. And I held conversations with my English Master subscribers for an hour. I talked to, I think, 5 of you guys for 1 hour last month. Peter, who is a great freelance teacher who works with me and helps with conversation clubs, he held a film club every Wednesday and free chats every Wednesday as well for my Patreon subscribers. He also gave big discounts to his classes. And there was so much more. Discord server, Quizlets, study packs. There's so much value you get from becoming a Patreon subscriber. Now, why am I telling you all of this? I want to continue expanding and growing and trying to deliver the best English learning content out there. I want to create super affordable, ideally free, English courses for you guys and classes for you guys. I want to create more YouTube and video content. I want to hold even more conversation clubs. My dream is to have a Thinking in English event every single day of the week. I want you guys to get as much opportunity to learn as possible. At the moment, I do events Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and podcast episodes are released on Monday and Friday, but I want more. To achieve this, I think I need to hire some people. I already work 50 or 60 hours a week, and Peter helps me out a little bit, but I need to hire more people, probably some freelancers and tutors. My ultimate goal is to get 1,000 Patreon subscribers, and at that point, I'd probably be able to hire full-time or part-time employees to help me make things. But that seems quite unrealistic at the moment. I've had 400 Patreon subscribers for about 2 years. It seems unrealistic to get 1,000 of you guys to join. So here is my plan. I want as many of you as possible to join right now. And then I will slowly raise the price of my middle Patreon level over the next 6 months. If you join now, or before June, you will pay £10 a month for the middle level of Patreon. This gets you all the benefits I listed before for £10 a month. And you will pay that forever. The price won't increase unless you quit and rejoin. But you're guaranteed £10 a month. In fact, if you pay annually, I think you get 20% discount, so £8 a month. Over the past year, I have introduced lots of new benefits, moving from 5 conversation clubs to 6 conversation clubs a week, a film club, ad-free episodes, but I haven't increased the prices in this time. I think it is time I need to up the price slightly. In June, the price will increase for new subscribers, not old subscribers, not existing subscribers. And in June, it will become £12 a month to become an English learner. And then in January next year, I think I will raise it for one final time to £15 a month. And this will probably be the final raise that I'll do for that level. By joining now, you will be supporting the show and getting that lower price. If you can't join Patreon, that is absolutely fine. I understand if you can't join. I don't subscribe to any of my favourite podcast Patreons or subscription platforms. But if you guys want to benefit and join the conversation clubs or listen to more episodes or just support me, I would really encourage you to join. But if you can't, it's fine. There's other ways to support the show. In fact, probably the best ways are by liking my podcast and posts on social media, sharing episodes, following me on social media, and rating Thinking in English wherever you listen. If you're on Apple or if you're on Spotify, leave a rating and rate Thinking in English. Hopefully, I'll be making another update video in 2030, telling all of you about the amazing things that have happened over the past 5 years. I do wonder, will I still be making Thinking in English in 2030? If you had asked me in 2020, what would I be doing in 2025? I would not have said being a full-time podcaster at all. I would not have predicted this for my life. But somehow, this is how things have turned out, and I am now speaking to all of you guys, asking you to support me on Patreon and listen to more episodes. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for subscribing and supporting me over the past 4.5 years. Let's keep learning English together and let's keep studying. Thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you next time. Goodbye.